What's up, y'all? One Piece One Life here, and guys, I was wrong, or at least it's not confirmed that I was right. Because see, last week chapter 1140 came out, and in that chapter we got a display that I thought was a clear indication of Gabon's use and having of Conqueror's Haki. You know, the moment that he charged up the key with Haki and we saw all of the black lightning spewing off of it. I'm not gonna lie, Oda really had me convinced that this was Conqueror's Haki, and a lot of me still says it is. But then the thing that I forgot to think about when reading and forgot to mention during my chapter review is that we've been tricked like this before. As many people will bring up, this isn't the first time that armament has had Conqueror's Haki lines like this, with most people noting, of course, the infamous ulti example. And so that just really got me thinking, wow, how is Haki such an amazing concept, but executed so poorly? And that just made me realize, you know what, it's about time we did a Haki introspective. It's topical, so there's no better time than now. So in this video, I'm going to be explaining why Haki is, in my opinion, the best, but also simultaneously the worst power system in anime. But before we get to explaining anything, y'all, I need y'all to do me a favor. Like the video, subscribe to the channel for more One Piece content just like this every week, and share it around with all your friends who love the series. Guys, we finally did it. We got to 500 subs. This is big. To think that there's 500 people who actually want to listen to me, it makes me happy. But I know that we're not done yet, because we can really push for that road to 1K. Oh, and make sure you subscribe to me and my boys over at CSY. It's almost at 4.2 now. You know that we're growing like crazy. So to start off this video, I think we're gonna start with the things that I think are great about Haki first. I think the thing that works the best about Haki for me personally is just the theming of it. Thematically, Haki is perfect for this story. I mean, the story is all about people's dreams and the will that they have to achieve them. And no one can tell me that willpower itself isn't a large theme in One Piece. It is the entire point of Luffy's character. If your main protagonist is defined by having immeasurable amounts of willpower, striving always towards his goal, never giving up, then I think right there you have what the theme is. And I think it's the theme that is the most touched on in One Piece as well, because to some degree, every character is experiencing this. Again, all of Luffy's best character writing moments come from when that will is either challenged or raised up. Be that during the post-war arc where his will was wavering after losing his brother and it needed to be reaffirmed, or during the climax of Wano where this will and his immeasurable just drive to keep getting stronger eventually led him to Gear 5. So we have willpower as a major theme, right? So then Oda is just like, well, we have will right here, and this is my magical pirate manga. Why don't I just go ahead and turn that will into actual tangible energy? And thus, Haki was born. I also like that it ties into the theme not just of having a will, but also the theme of inherited will. Because with Joy Boy's Haki knot, we finally have an example of actual Haki literally being passed on to another person. And this makes sense. The Iron Giant was carrying on Joy Boy's will even 800, 900 years later. And who knows, this could also tie into why the Gorosei have Conqueror's Haki, because it's Imu's will that's being imparted onto them. Which seems to make sense considering that with Garling moving up, we now know that, at least to some extent, these guys were just regular people before. Now the next reason that I really love Haki as a power system is because of the hype. Guys, the majority of the insane feats that we have, at least in the post-time skip era, are all Haki feats. Every time we see something new from Haki, everybody loses their shit. Shanks' Wi-Fi Haki, Garp's Galaxy Impact, Shanks' Divine Departure, Roger and Odin's Clash, and then of course most recently in Egghead, Joy Boy's overwhelming Haki, which was strong enough to send the 5 Gorosei packing, forcing them out of their demonic transformations, when Luffy in Gear 5 couldn't scratch them. And you better believe that there's going to be a lot more amazing Haki feats coming up in the future. Haki is also a great indication of somebody's strength. Now this could be on a basic level of just being able to sense somebody's Haki and be like, whoa, this person's actually really strong. Because at the end of the day, it is the equivalent to, you know, chakra, ki, nen. But by indication of strength, I mean more so in terms of splitting the sky. See, with Haki, we're able to actually kind of rank people based on their feats, based on what they're capable of doing, because there's just certain levels that you can reach with your Haki. We knew that Luffy was a great pirate when base Luffy was splitting the skies with Kaido in his Oni form. And then Conqueror's Coding was introduced, and that was the next level of power. And then beyond that, Shanks and the Gorosei and Joy Boy and everybody else who are Haki mains keep showing us more and more things, and that's not gonna stop here. So watching Luffy and maybe Zoro and Sanji eventually reach that level is also going to be very fitting in terms of following their growth. Now, another really great thing about Haki that, in my opinion, is probably underrated in the community is its subconscious use. When you really think about it, there's actually been many times when Haki has been used unconsciously, where the character is either sleeping or unconscious and yet their Haki is still activated. Whitebeard dodging Ace in his sleep, Don Chinjiao having armament on his head even after being knocked out. Luffy released a burst of Conqueror's Haki that was still able to take out the weak-willed members of the Beast Pirates even after being one-shot by Kaido. Keep in mind that this was enough for Kaido to not kill him on the spot because he actually thought that Luffy would be interesting. You know, personally, I like that Haki persists even when you're unconscious because, it makes sense. Just think about it. Haki is intrinsically part of somebody. It's literally ingrained into who you are. There's no reason why that should stop just because your body is asleep or unconscious. However, the specifications on this need to kind of be explained a bit more in terms of what Haki really is and how connected to you it is. Because if not, it unfortunately leads to problems, which is actually a great segue into start talking about the bad parts about Haki. And because we're already talking about it, let's talk about the negative side of this, which is the passive Haki problem. So guys, ask yourself something. If I were to say this term, Haki is a passive ability, would you agree or disagree? Because I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I don't know. There's evidence for both. Because on one hand, we've been told multiple times, your Haki is not limitless. You can run it out and you can exhaust it, and if you do, you have to recharge. This is what Law notes when he sees Gear 4 for the first time. He says that Luffy's putting an incredible stress on the amount of Haki he's using, and if he drains it, that's when Luffy deflates. That's why Luffy had the idea during his fight with Katakuri in Whole Cake Island to drag out that fight as long as possible, long enough for Katakuri to overuse his observation Hakis and prevent him from seeing into the future. So see, the fact that it can be overused and exhausted makes it seem like you have to manually turn it off and on so that you're not exhausting it all the time. But then on the other hand, you have my earlier examples of people who use it unconsciously. So then wouldn't that drain the Haki then? Which I guess you can get around by saying that their Haki reserves aren't infinite, but they're so high that we're not going to see it run out. But even then. Now, my next problem with Haki isn't Oda's fault, and it's more of the fan base. And that's going to be the fan base's misconceptions on who can have Conqueror's Haki specifically. Now, I mentioned this a lot in my Kobe video last week, so definitely go check it out there if you have the chance. Watch it after this one, it's one of my best videos. But a lot of people seem to think that there's a certain archetype of person who has Conqueror's Haki and rule out other people who don't fit that type. Kobe and Sanji are perfect examples of these. And the only thing I can really say in response to that is a lot of people are conflating Conqueror's Haki and the Will of D, but again, I talk about that in that video, so please go check it out. Now, another issue that this raises, at least in terms of trying to comprehend Haki, is Haki and its connection to the soul. Now, it makes sense for Haki to be part of the soul because it's integrated into your personhood. And we know that unique souls exist because Brook confirms that with his powers. But it raises some interesting questions like, does that mean each person's Haki is as unique as each person's soul? And they're tied to the soul, not the body. So if your soul got swapped, your Haki would follow you. Because remember in Punk Hazard when Sanji was swapped into Nami's body? And he used observation Haki to find Kinemon's torso in the lake. Now the interesting thing is, he used observation Haki while in Nami's body, but Nami hasn't shown the ability to use Haki at all before or since. So a lot of people would say that that makes sense. That means that it's almost irrefutable evidence that the soul is tied to Haki. But then that raises more questions. Questions like, well, if Kuma literally had his will removed during the operation, how is it possible that in Egghead Island, he's still able to use Haki? And it's interesting because people will say, well, it's because his soul is still intact. But what does that mean? Because wasn't that the point of Vegapunk's entire operation on him, which was to remove his soul, remove his will so that he's just a shell of himself, literally? Wasn't that the whole point of Kuma's sacrifice, telling Vegapunk to do that to him for the sake of protecting Bonnie? Which, side note, no longer has any meaning to it because Vegapunk had said that he's going to restore it in Elbaf. I don't know that we're ever going to get an answer to that question, but I think that it's something very much so worth studying. Now, another problem with Haki is one that's a little more personal, and that's just that it became too much of a standard in the New World. At the beginning, a few people knew Haki, and it was interesting because it actually showed those power levels as I was saying before. But as the New World saga continued to go on, it got to a point where literally everyone was being introduced as baseline having observation and armament. To the point where if you don't, you're going to be useless. I can tell whether somebody is actually going to be an interesting character or not based on the fact of whether they're confirmed to have Haki or not. Obviously, the Straw Hats are the exception to this because, you know, the majority of the crew still doesn't have Haki, but they're also the main characters. And I think what we're really losing out of this is just the more unique fighting style that came with Devil Fruits and then just all the other fighting styles that we had. Because now, by and large, most people's fighting styles is just going to be taking a weapon and coding it in Haki. And it's like, there's only so many times that I want to see that before I get tired of it, you know? But guys, now we've come to the single worst problem with Haki in the entire story. And that has to be its representation. Guys, we all know it. This shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. No one ever knows when a certain type of Haki is being used. And for this, I'm talking specifically about Advanced Conqueror's Haki, because that is basically one of the most important abilities in the show. I do think that Oda did a poor job of portraying it because its visual indicator is supposed to be no contact, but Projection Armament, which is Advanced Armament Haki, does the same thing. Then of course some people say that it's the streak lines that indicate whether Conqueror's Haki is being used. But again, we can't use that for sure, because there have been other times when Armament has clearly been shown to have those streaks too, because if not, everybody would retort,
well, I guess that means that Ulti has it because she had a clash with Luffy.
To that end, I will say that in my opinion, I think it's more of an indication ever since Advanced Conquerors as a concept has been introduced, only because even though we were in the Wano arc, Oda hadn't really explained to us what Advanced Conquerors was by the time that Ulti was doing all that. But still, I understand how that's not at all a clear indication. And that gets to the main problem, which is that it's very hard to understand the difference between when Advanced Conquerors is being used versus Advanced Armament. Because at their base, they're both strength multipliers. So when you have Advanced Conquerors, does that mean there's just no reason to use Advanced Armament anymore because it's the same thing but stronger? I personally think that to differentiate it, if Armament was strictly for defensive purposes, that could have been interesting, but you know, that's just not the way the cookie crumbles. Or another difference could have been that Advanced Conquerors is a thing that allows you the no-touch rule. With Advanced Conquerors Haki not only giving you a boost to power, but it also allows you to transmit an attack through a medium. But again, the fact that Advanced Armament does that too invalidates this. And then there's the anime, which just makes everything much more abysmal, because they're just always misinterpreting and miscoloring things. And I mean, it must be very confusing, especially for the anime onlys, because imagine the episode here in this picture, you see Blackbeard with red Haki. You think back and you saw that at the end of Wano, Shanks' red Haki was being used when he had Wi-Fi Haki. So does that mean Blackbeard has conquerors? No, it doesn't. And then of course during Wano, there was even the Haki auras in general, where each person's Haki was a different color for reasons. Even during the Aokiji versus Garp fight, you have it make it seem as though Aokiji also has advanced conquerors, even though that's not the case. At least hasn't been confirmed to be the case. So as you can see guys, Haki is not without its problems. It's definitely a very confusing power set, and I think that it just needs to be explained more. So Oda, if you're ever gonna do one of those 10 question type segments again, you better bring this up. What do you guys think about Haki? Do you think that it's an amazing power system with no flaws, or do you think that it's actually worse than Devil Fruits? Make sure you tell me all your thoughts and more in the comments below. Now that is going to be the end of the video, y'all. But before we go, like the video, subscribe to the channel for more One Piece content just like this, and share it around with all your friends who love the series. I'm trying to build a community, but I need your help to do it. That's going to be all from me. I'll catch you on the next one. And always remember, One Piece, one life. You know, why don't all the Straw Hats have Haki? I just feel like it's time. Y'all ever thought about which Haki each one of them would have? I mean, I guess it's fairly obvious, but still. Nami would be observation for sure, just sensing the weather and all that. Chopper, I see him having either or even both for different reasons, because he can use observation with his scope, but then obviously he's more of a brawler, so armament. Robin can definitely use some armament, and you know what, some might even say that it's already being used in Demonio. Frankie should easily be armament, but guys, what do we conclude from that combo attack in Egghead? Does he have it? And then Brook is obviously armament as well. Now the real question is, would I have conquerors? I think yes.